All right. Good afternoon. This is I'm bringing the Human Relations Commission February 21st meeting to order. We will begin with introductions, but first I want to just say we're part of this grand experiment. We're in a new environment and a new setting, and I'm just letting the impact of this room waft over me at this point, so I might be overawed by it at some point. But we're glad that we have people here with us today, and would like to introduce each other. I think I will begin. My name is Barry Nelson. I'm chair of the Fargo Human Relations Commission. And Paul, if you'd want to introduce yourself next.
Yeah, I'm Paul Jensen. I'm vice chair of the Human Relations Commission.
I'm Cheryl Schafel, Human Relations Commission.
I'm Hamida Dakane.
Rachel Hoffman.
Matura Alier.
All right, thank you. And it does show that we have quorum here at this meeting this morning, or this afternoon. Thank you for that. We'll talk about attendance as a placeholder later in the agenda. I would ask now that we look at and either approve or amend the agenda. We have the agenda before us, and anybody who comes in has access to the agenda as well.
I would motion to approve.
All right.
I'll second it.
All right. Any discussion? All those in approval of the agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Same thing with the minutes from our December 20th meeting. If you have a chance to look at that, and I will be looking for a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting.
I'll move.
Mature, thank you.
I'll second.
Hamida, thank you. The moved and seconded. Any further discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Time for public comment, and we have an individual perhaps who wishes to address us this afternoon. Frank, I guess the presentation will occur over that stand over there. If you could, all right, thank you. Okay. Thank you. One for each? All right. Thank you. And if you would introduce yourself to us, and then we'll allow you to continue with your...
Yeah, my name is Frank Hunkler. I've lived in Fargo, North Dakota most of the years since I returned from the service in 1980. We can, if you want, go right to page 2, because that's what I'm asking this commission to do of my thing. So I've never done this before, so I have no. Hi, John.
Hi, Frank.
I have no idea what I'm doing. You got a copy there for
yes.
His Eminence? All right. I asked the Commission on Human Relations to develop programs and policies that result in ridding the city of Fargo of all fear, ignorance, stigma, and discrimination involving any person or family affected by the polymorbid conditions and medical or mental health emergencies related to what I call the circular continuum of addiction, mental health, and mental health/related disabilities. The city of Fargo, North Dakota is a mecca of efforts in 2019. This is on page 2. By thousands of individuals of every walk of life, groups of every type, organizations of every purpose, whether for profit or not, to help persons and their families with emergencies related to the life-threatening symptoms of this condition. Yet the deaths from suicide and drug overdose have risen in this region and collectively in the United States enough to lower the average life expectancy. More of our loved ones are dying each year from these preventable and treatable conditions than our children and loved ones that died in the entire Vietnam War on the United States side of the war. I know the horror of these statistics. The soldier in my infantry squad are listed there. Limiting in no small way all those efforts is the fear, ignorance, stigma, and discrimination resulting from the centuries of misinformation and disinformation about these conditions and the endless but always detrimental to the person and family in need, ruminations about nature or nurture. The World Health Organization, the United Nations, the Center for Disease Control, and most every organization involved in the treatment of and advocacy for persons with life-threatening and life-limiting difficulties due to addiction / mental health and mental illness / related disabilities agree that the primary cause for lack of treatment on par with other preventable and treatable diseases and equal access to treatment is fear, ignorance, stigma, and discrimination. I believe that the Commission on Human Relations is the one group in the political structure of the City of Fargo uniquely charged with bringing unity to such an effort and developing programs and policies that would eliminate one barrier after another through education, dialogue, policies and practices, and recommending laws where needed. In the last few years around the country, units of government are beginning to take on this issue. I believe the City of Fargo is personally positioned to be a role model in this area. The efforts proposed here could greatly enhance and build the capacity of the Commission and the community-wide efforts by finding healing language, policies, and recommending laws where needed. The matter of nature or nurture has been accomplished over the decades with similar, largely preventable and treatable diseases such as heart disease could be put to rest for this community and serve as a role model for others. That's the basic idea. And the other information that's in here is basically the only credentials I have is that I have been an openly recovering drug addict in this part of the country for 38 years and have spent probably 40,000 hours, conservatively speaking, mentoring addicts to be able to stay alive and have a life. And as well have, over those years, not donated much money to charities, but have probably donated $500,000 in cash and in-kind services to help individuals learn to make the system work for them. And the final thing I'd want to say is that there are very few of us drug addicts who have been openly recovering as drug addicts in this state since the early 1980s. And those of us that are still around agree with one thing, and that it is more difficult for the average addict to get clean and stay clean now than it was in 1980. And every year it becomes harder and harder. And the universal, I don't care what organization you go online and research, they say that the #1 issue is the overwhelming stigma and ignorance and fear surrounding the problems with addiction and mental illness and the disabilities that come from that horrible mixture. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for standing here and talking to us today. Open, if you would be willing to take questions.
Of course.
Questions from the commissioners for Frank?
Well, Frank, I just want to say I'm really happy to hear that you spend so much time on helping other people, and I think that's been a real important task. The underlying causes for all of that is probably a lack of compassion and empathy in our daily lives, not because we don't really have it when you push the button, but it's because we're so busy with other things, right? And then people who have drug addictions or mental diseases are looked upon as a burden that you'd rather not deal with. And we need to get over that. And of course, we need to find methods how to do that. And it's not just for Fargo, it's for the whole country. And those methods is what I think we should debate a little bit about, where people can go and get the help they need to overcome the difficult situations that they're in. Now, drugs is one thing, and mental disease is another thing, but sometimes they also correlate. And the programs that are available to drug addicts and to people with mental diseases, I think it's beginning to improve, but we got a long way to go. So it's a question about how do we get forward here in our community? How can we make, a more mental healthy community here. And that spreads across the whole spectrum of, Americans who are born here, Native Americans, immigrants, everybody. So thank you for your effort. And I'd like to hear some suggestions to what can we actually do.
If I could ask Frank, I think one of the most profound, you've said many profound things, but the fact that you're saying that there is, in a sense, we'd like to think that as a community and as a culture and a society, we are advancing, and with more information that we are able to do better. And you talked about it being more difficult now than in the 1980s. That's a very disturbing concept, that we are going backwards in this area. Is there anything, as you've lived your life and observed, that you would attribute this going backwards in addressing addiction in our community?
I would say that the number one result of treating addiction differently from similar diseases, including heart disease, lung disease, type 2 diabetes, and things like that. Historically, addiction, most of the treatment centers and that sort of thing in this community are not licensed in the same way that a hospital is. They're not regulated. They're basically not regulated. But it's a separate industry entirely, because the medical profession doesn't see this doesn't even see it as a disease on par with heart disease, meaning heart attack isn't heart disease, but if you don't give the emergency services to the person having the heart attack, there are many worse problems coming. The person overdosing on drugs has to crawl into a facility somewhere, plead for help, fill out applications, go across town again, and maybe 3 weeks later they will get help. There is in the EMT, if I use the right term, profession, something called the golden hour, that every minute that follows the onset of a medical emergency determines the likelihood if that person's going to live. Addiction is no different, but it's not treated like other diseases. And the problem is that we are stuck in this discussion about whether or not it is nature or nurture. It reminds me of, I'm also gay. It reminds me of the 1980s. In fact, the last time I, as I say in my cover letter, had so much fear and trepidation of coming before a group like this. In 1980, the life for gay people here was getting so awful, and most gay people were just moving away if they wanted to protect their professions and so forth. I decided to stay, and I said, no, the community, you're going to change. One of the things we decided to do was ask Mayor John Lindgren to come forward. Well, there were only 2 people in the community we could find that would do it, and I was one of them. We came to the old city hall and through back channels had to arrange a meeting with John, and he was very uncomfortable about meeting with us, and he wouldn't let it be on the schedule, and we had to agree to not talk to the media before or after. So we met with him, and the rest, of course, is history. He came out blazing, and life has changed for us here, and that's the same sort of thing. It's just ignorance. I'm a patient at the Veterans Administration, the hospital, and doctor after doctor after doctor are so ignorant about addiction that it just appalls me in 2019. A friend of mine is a professional in the treatment field, and he does the training for the doctors coming from Grand Forks to intern at the VA, and they are down to a 2 or 3 hour of training on addiction, and they are so ignorant. If they were that ignorant about heart disease, we'd all be in trouble. But the source of it is that, just like we used to with gay people say, is it nature or nurture, and then we stuck there. We don't do that with heart disease. We don't ask the person coming in with a heart attack whether they caused it themselves or it's genetic. We just serve them. But an addict does, the typical problems that an addict has getting help they're almost insurmountable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Other questions for Frank?
No, but I would like to just comment about one thing, is that in other countries in the world, like in Switzerland and Portugal, there are effective ways of treating drug addicts, that they have safe access to drugs. They can come like downtown Zurich, for example. You can, if you are a drug addict, you can go there, you can get whatever it is you need in order to, continue your life. But on the same time, when you're there, you, of course, get registered, and then you get subjected to treatment. So that there is actually a care plan associated with it, so that once you are signed up, then you have the ability to be supported in kicking the habit. I do not know of any other mental disease service. It's probably there, but I haven't heard much about it. But I was wondering, I think in the United States you probably can't do that at this time due to federal laws. But it's really the way to go, because they have had incredible success in treating people. And that's what we should look at. Where do they have success? And Portugal was one of those countries where it was, drug abuse was horrible. And they actually managed to get that under control by making drugs available in safe places. And I think that's a direction that we should look at.
Thank you. I came to this commission because first it's about words. It's about words that addicts use to talk about themselves. It's words that professionals use to talk about addicts. It's words that the police use to talk about addicts. It's words that the Veterans Administration uses to talk about addicts. It's the way we culturally think about addiction. That's why I'm coming here, because to me, this is about discrimination. The Americans with Disabilities Act now protects addicts in certain situations where not if you're an addict, but if you have a long difficulty with work history and different things, that it now is starting to be covered as something that you can't be fired for. But I'm coming to this commission because the state of language and the lack of discussion about the language we use related to addiction is what it used to be with gay people. That even if you get a group of trained professionals together, they will inevitably start debating whether or not it's a disease. Well, that doesn't save a life. So I came here because I believe this is about discrimination. People are dying because of the way we think of addicts. For instance, if you were to survey most people in this community, I'm quite sure that they would say that most addicts have always died from addiction and most addicts will always die from addiction. That's the #1 stereotype that exists. And I think it's pretty universal. And so I came here because it's #1 about language. And it's about the policies that follow from that language.
Thank you. Amina, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Cheryl.
First of all, Frank, I want to thank you for coming here today. We had a conversation before you started, and so I have several different things that I'd like to comment on about your presentation. The first one is the stigmatism. I think one of the biggest issues with stigmatism, and stigmatism is such a thing that gets in the way. First of all, you have people who are addicts that are scared to go in and ask for recovery because of the stigmatism. And I believe that a lot of the stigmatism comes from the fact that they believe that addicts either have a moral failure and it's been criminalized. So people don't want to walk in and say, "Here I am, help me," because the people around them will say, point at them and look at them as someone who is defective in their character, and also someone who is a criminal, whether or not they have been charged. People don't look at addicts as human beings. And I totally agree with that. One of the problems with the stigmatization is even people who are in recovery, people who have turned their lives around and are contributing to society, are scared to say that they are alcoholics or they are drug addicts. And so at this time right now, I'd like to say that yes, I am a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and I have 38 years of sobriety. In fact, Frank and I have the same amount of time. And I have seen those things firsthand. The second thing I'd like to say is what Paul touched on. And I can say this with a little bit of authority because I worked for the State Department in the Foreign Service with the UN mission to international organizations in Vienna. One of the organizations we worked with was the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. Those offices that, it's an organization that determines treaties and agreements at the international level on drugs, criminality, what's legal, what isn't, what countries agree on. And I watched firsthand as our United States delegation would go in and talk about the criminalization when most of the other nations were talking about harm reduction. And when it's at the national level being talked about from the U.S. as being criminalization, that type of thing, it's really hard to change it except if it's at the grassroots level. And at the grassroots level is where we need to start talking about harm reduction. And that is taking care of those addicts and to the point, because if we can't keep them alive, we can't help them recover. I had a very good friend here in Fargo in the recovery community who always said, you can't sober up a corpse. And if we want to do the best that we can for that community, because they are real human beings, if we just watch them die, we can't help them. So I'm really glad to see you here today and would like to hear more about your ideas of actually how we can help, how we can start a grassroots effort, because that's where it's got to come from, and what your ideas are. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Frank, I want to acknowledge you for being and the voice you are for lots of folks out there that aren't here, but you're representing them. I guess what's going through my mind, and I'm the liaison here, but what's going through my mind is maybe it's about time this discussion comes to the Human Relations Commission. You know, I know we're really involved in law enforcement and in public health arenas, but this topic hasn't come to us like it is today. And it's a really important social fabric discussion. So rather than us just talking and talking and talking, maybe my suggestion to us is that we consider creating a very short-term ad hoc committee to, on behalf of the Human Relations Commission, start vetting these topics, start communicating with public health, start communicating with law enforcement, because I'm involved on both of those fronts. And this would be really important to have this advocacy come from this group here as well. So that'd be my thought, is maybe if some folks would be willing to volunteer to meet with Frank and separate representatives of the community, and then we do some outreach to public health, law enforcement, and some others, and we address these issues and see what recommendations come back to us, because I think it's really, really, really relevant and critical and urgent.
Thank you, Commissioner Strand. Does that seem like a logical next step for you, Frank?
I completely agree. And the thing I would add is that, for instance, the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission and the Homeless Coalition, and I know that Cass County Jail is doing some very creative things. There are many, 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 many great things being done in this community, but everybody runs up against the stigma. Everybody. I don't care where. I was at a meeting yesterday of a group that's planning a center of a certain kind. And 3 minutes cannot go by without talking about either a discussion of whether it's a disease or not a disease, or the barriers because of the public attitude toward. And so on the one hand, there's lots of great things being done, but it would be great to have some outfit in the political structure say, look, we're going to take this on. It's no small task. Very, very, very few cities have ever done this. Some units of government have done it. Some organizations have done it, and there's lots of models out there, and it basically is, number one, first of all, dialogue among us who show up. because we're all filled with these attitudes. Anyone who has been involved with race and those kind of things, you know that they're just attitudes that are there, and sometimes they're so deep that if you don't talk about them and name them, and I think that's exactly what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. I'll give Abdulwali the last question, and then we'll take some action on this proposal.
Thank you, Barry. And thank you, Frank, and I appreciate for you coming up here and bringing this issue to our attention. And just paying attention to this, like I had a question, is that I was reading the last page at the end, like the fight is one. No human should have to fight, certainly not alone. That's true. And just wanted to ask you, and have you, maybe within the city of Fargo, and look into a program or reach out to any program that is helping the addict that you feel like is strong, in need to strengthen?
What was the last part again?
Have you looked into a program that really helping the addict at the moment that you think and is helping?
Oh, there's right now, and that's why I think this is a perfect time to do this as a city, because there are more addicts that are out of the closet. 5 years ago, there was barely a drug addict who admitted to, for instance, going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings who was out in public, period. And with F5 and different things, there are so many, and the work of the Blue Ribbon Commission is a lot of good things are happening out there, but everybody runs into the same problem. And then you talk about culturally sensitive treatment programs. They don't exist in this community.
Thank you. So the proposal from Commissioner Strand is that we appoint an ad hoc. So I'm going to ask, are there any members of the commissioners who would be interested in serving on an ad hoc to carry this very complex, as you've said, issue? Paul, Cheryl?
Yeah, I would definitely be interested.
Okay. Anyone else? Mature?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Your timing couldn't be better, Frank. We're in the process of finishing up some strategic planning for us, so this is a great interjection, and you obviously resonate with the chord here. So we will get our task force together, and we hope you would stand ready to work, continuing going forward.
I'm retired. This is my passion.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank, so much for coming today.
You all look very important up there.
That was the point of this all, right? Okay, so again, Paul, Cheryl, and Matur will put some logistics together to get this moving forward.
And Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, I would be an affiliate to that
Thank you,
group,
Chad.
happily.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Do we have others who wish to address the commissioner in terms of public comment? And we have two parts in the meeting. We have it now, and we could do it later. Do you wish to also present to the commission today? Would it be okay if you waited to the later part of the meeting to address, or would it, for your timing, be better now? Later? Okay, we'll make sure we circle back to it. Thank you. I wanted to acknowledge again, since we did our introductions, that we had Commissioner John Strand, City Commissioner John Strand join us, and Commissioner Abdulwali Sharif join us as well to the meeting today. All right, so if we move into the next order, that is to talk about and do a legislative update. We as a commission, of course, were particularly concerned, and in fact, some comments went to the legislature, the North Dakota legislature, on Senate Bill 2303 and then House Bill 1441, which both addressed instituting LGBT and gender identity, the first one, into the state law. As we know, Senate Bill 2303 was heard by committee, went to the floor of the Senate, and was defeated 20 to 27. So the bill that we fully supported, which provided protection and employment and housing for members of the LGBT community, and which would include gender identity, did not go forward. A second bill, House Bill 1441, was proposed in the House. We did not take a position on it. My own personal opinion was that this was a non-starter from the beginning, because it was in order to try advance some protections it did not include the transgender community in the protections. And as a human rights advocate, I believe you do not start breaking groups apart and divide them in order to afford protections. 1441 was heard in committee, really had only 2, I think it was 10 against, 2 for passage, and that also failed on the House floor just this past week. So at the current time, there is no longer any discussion or any bills in front of the legislature extending protection for any kind to the LGBT community and the gender identity community as well. This is, of course, of concern, I believe, to this body and to I as an individual. Just to note that this is the 5th time that such a attempt has been made with the North Dakota State Legislature. And it's a very basic kind of thing that we have 7 protected classes in this state. We clearly know there's lots of evidence that people within the LGBT community, and particularly those within the transgender community, suffer disproportionate discrimination in employment and housing. And for this not to be addressed by our legislature, I believe is a real injustice that's going forward. So questions on the update? I don't know if I did it justice or not, but I did appreciate the fact that several of the cities, our own included, City of Bismarck and the City of Grand Forks all supported Senate Bill 2303, which again was the broadest definition of anti-discrimination. All right, work remains to be done. Commissioner Strand?
Mr. Chairman, and I believe that Fargo wrote a letter of support as well. I guess here's where I'm at on this, and I'm at a loss as to the disconnect between statutory allowance statewide versus local allowance under a home rule charter. I think what we need to do, regardless if people tell us we can't get there, is advance that position in Fargo. That's what I say. That we go and take it to the City Commission. We take these recommendations. These are our asks, that you enhance these protected classes protections everywhere you can in the city, in employment and in housing and wherever. And let's run into the walls we run into. Let people tell us why we can't, and then let's address what we need to do to be able to do that. We're not going to get it through Bismarck, but we can through Fargo. I hope. And I'm 2.5 years into this, and I'm still not clear, well, what is it that's stopping us? And maybe it's a real easy answer, but that's my view, is we as a commission take this to the Fargo City Commission, formalize it through the channels, through the legal departments, through our support staff, and get it to the point where it's the closest we can do, and then let's take it forward.
Thank you.
I don't care if we lose.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. But we need to advance this.
We'll do it to win. That would be the intent. Thank you, Commissioner Strand. Any other comments from commissioners? I think that's a great leadership cue, that this is something that we need to work on, and we can't depend on our legislature at this point to be doing that. So thank you. We will take that under action with the Human Relations. I speak as chair. MLK event wrap-up, number 6 on the agenda. Another very, very successful event. Kara, are you in a position to just kind of lead that discussion of the wrap-up and how things went? I want to say kudos to the planning individuals, because they did a great job. So, Kara, please.
Yeah. So I have a little 4-page summary that Reach Partners provided us about evaluation of how the event went with some different metrics. So I'll just share some of that with you, and then I can send the full document out to everyone to read through everything. I'm just going to kind of summarize a few things. We're guessing a guesstimation around 240 people. We received 61 surveys that we had included in the program. We had 18 suggestions for nominees next year, so we kind of have a jump on that. When we are at that point, I can reach out to the people who made the nominations at this year's event to fill out nomination forms, so we can be a little ahead of the game for that next year. The Haley's Milk Run donation was approximately $760. the volunteers put in approximately 73.5 hours of volunteer time. That broke down to, like at the event, about 30 hours for the hosts and event volunteers, and about 18 hours for the performers and artists. We also, with the survey, we asked a variety of questions, and then at the MLK wrap-up meeting, we discussed some, what went well and some lessons learned for next year. And generally, the comments that we heard from attendees were positive. A lot of them said they will be back in 2020. It was good. They liked the interactive entertainment. The format and timing were perfect. They really liked the dancing. They appreciated Chair Nelson stepping in for Commissioner Strand when he was ill. They appreciated that the entertainment came with messaging. We got a lot of feedback about having a professional photographer and ASL interpreters. And people really liked the dress rehearsal that we had ahead of time, so that everyone who was going to be on stage, whether it was, just everyone knew what to expect. Some general lessons learned. We had a discussion about adding more to the event since we have the Fargo Theater all day. Maybe screening some of MLK's speeches earlier in the day, or other such programming ideas. And we talked a lot about how to engage younger audiences. We did get a lot of feedback from the surveys about marketing and getting the word out, as the crowd seems to be the same folks year after year, and how we can sort of get some fresh faces at the event. So that's just kind of the general overview. Like I said, I can send you this 4-page document. All in all, I think it was a great event. If we are going to do some new programming, we talked about the need to start meeting earlier in the year. We talked about maybe hiring an artist to get new artwork, and so all of those things, if we want to do any changes, we'll have to start meeting earlier than August in order to get them done. So put that in your brains. Be ready to join the committee when it comes up.
Great, thanks, Kara. Again, a great accommodation. I heard several comments immediately following and then within the week afterwards of saying that they felt this was the most inspirational, professionally run, that it just had a really great energy to it. So people who've gone there year after year really noted the improvements that were accomplished this year. So thank you for the
I just want to make sure that we note that Reach Partners helped a lot with that professionalizing of the event. So I want to give them a shout out.
Yes, thank you. Any questions, comments from other members?
I just have a comment. I believe next year is the 20th anniversary of the event. So I believe, but I think when that happens, it would be a great opportunity to kind of make it a bigger and better and really highlight the event and draw attention to it in the community, because it has been improving vastly every single year. And that will be a good milestone to celebrate.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Rachel, for that. That's the perfect time for us to find a boulevard or a street to name after Martin Luther King in Fargo. We should look for the growth in the city. We should look for an opportunity. I know they explored it years ago. Maybe you were on the commission then, Barry, when Janine Kabrinsky and others, when they were talking about NP Avenue, maybe being considered for a name change. But let's put that on our radar and target it and work with our planning and development and city folks who do look for a street or a boulevard or an arterial road that we can appropriately name and make that part of the celebration next year if we can get there.
Great, thank you. Thank you for pushing us forward, John. That's excellent. Some excellent comments. Abdulali.
Yeah, just want to add a comment. The event was great, and just a suggestion that for next year, and if we can maybe, we suggest to meet early, but at the same time, maybe the event, since it's anniversary, if we can make it throughout the day, or maybe at least start, instead of just event, maybe start a few hours before, like, and in the theater, we have the theater all day. Maybe we can run a movie, anyone can come and watch, or also we can suggest some, question and answers, like a panel before the event, add some ideas. And I think it will be great if we can add, those suggestions. Is open for opinions.
Good, thank you. All right, I'm going to move us into the next item, which is budget, and we have two documents that are in regards to the budget. And certainly, it should be noted that we're kind of like building the plane as we're flying it this year. We're in a transitional. We really have talked about as our strategic planning is whether the way that we have been giving you out funds, particularly the grants that we send out, if that's the most effective way that we've been doing that. And I think we're really seriously digging into that and looking at changing that. In the same time, we continue to have monies dedicated to this, and so we don't want to provide surprises to people, but just to know. And so we have the memo from Nicole Crutchfield that talks about the budget reevaluation. Fortunately, I think we should look through this and maybe bring this back. She said we did not need action this month, but this is something that we really should look at, and particularly as it applies to our strategic planning that we are going to talk about in a moment. And then we do have a page, multicolored page, which has the budget for the Fargo Human Relations Commission for 2019, which shows a total of $16,000. Which is basically the monies that we use for the programming and sponsorships and so forth. So I think Nicole told me Tuesday night that there was too much money given to put in the budget to MLK, so that's going to be adjusted. That would be changed. That was a mistake, so I would make that notation on there. I don't know that we need to have any action on the budget this month. But any really quick comments or questions about the information you have in front of us? The executive committee, I think, will take a look at this more closely in March, and then we'll be bringing this back to the full commission, if that's okay. Agreed? All right, thank you. So that moves us into sponsorships. We do have true requests, and again, this is a part of the ongoing process that we've had where nonprofits, organizations, that are doing good things in the community. There's no question about that. Everything we've received is on behalf of doing some really good things in the community and requesting for some financial support through the Fargo Human Relations. And so the first, we had two, one of them which we discussed at the executive committee earlier this month, which was the standing request for building bridges. $500 is being requested. And then we have another request here from the Women Initiative Network of Liberia in Fargo, also for $50 or $500. And I believe we have representatives here, so you were going to maybe do some public comment time as well. But it's good timing if there maybe were questions about the proposal. So I'm putting this forward for consideration by the commission in terms of these two requests. And clarify for me, staff, the LSS building bridges has somewhat been a standing request, but we've changed it now where a request has to be given new every year. There's no longer a standing allocation for any kind of function. Is that correct?
Hi, yes, Commissioner Nelson, that is correct. On that budget item, I think the concept was discussing maybe moving away from the reoccurring sponsorships.
Right.
Opening up an application time period where everybody that wants to have funding related to the HRC can go ahead and submit an application. And it's just pulled out of that reoccurring sponsorship in the line item just for more transparency. And also developing some evaluation criteria for those applications.
Okay, do we have questions on, thank you for that clarification. Mm-hmm. Do we have questions on either one of the applications, Rachel?
I would like a clarification. Do you know how much we gave to building bridges last year? Because I believe there was some discussion on diverting funding away from projects that could go ahead without.
Yeah, I think we talk about that every year, about whether or not we want to fund projects that don't need our $500 or $250. I don't remember off the top of my head what we gave them last year. I remember that the request was $1,000, and we definitely did not give them that. It might have been 250, it might have been 500. Things I think it will be important for you to note with this application is that this request is, for sponsorship and does not include tickets to the event. So if we wanted to send commissioners to the event, we would have to pay for those as well.
And I know that came up in our executive committee as to what would be the best use of our monies. And in terms of supporting it, we certainly want to support this wonderful established event that goes on annually in our community, but that we might have as much impact by having as many of the commissioners attend with sponsorship as putting some money ahead of that, and that might allow us. We might redirect that into just sending more commissioners who wish to attend.
Or even directing money towards more of a scholarship option, since this is, I don't know what the ticket price is to attend, but to do something to make it accessible to more people who would benefit. Because I think it is a really great event that has been established and goes on year after year, but I believe the ticket price, I don't know if it's listed, but
maybe I'll do a really quick survey of commissioners. The event is April 9th and 10th. It's here in Fargo at the Fargo Holiday Inn. Just really quickly, any commissioners that are interested in attending this year? I know that I have attended in the past and would be interested in attending again. Can I get a really quick, anyone else?
Well, I just have a comment about the ticket price. Last year, it was $50 for student and then $90 for professionals, I think. But I don't know for this year if they change or it's the same.
okay, thank you. But yeah, and I will be out of town. Otherwise, I would love to go.
Anybody else? Abdiwali?
Yeah, and so just about the ticketing, I think I'm willing to go too.
Okay.
And what I wanted to ask was that the 500 they applied for, is the ticket included? So clearly it's not included. And secondly, I had a question about the budget. And previously we had like a recurring, sponsorship. So in this budget, did you like remove all those recurring sponsorship? Only I see like a sponsorship only for 2,000. And then this total budget for the commission is 16,000, and the sponsorship is only 2,000. So that means the recurring sponsorship is removed from here.
Yes, that's right. We were discussing in the executive meeting about removing the reoccurring sponsorships to do more of an open application process where everybody would apply that's interested in working with funds with the committee. Oh, yes, and also, Kara just reminded me, when you're looking at that budget chart, just more or less you're looking at the categories, not the numbers so much, and that's going to be flexible as you guys start working on your strategic planning. So this is just a draft, no action required on this today. It's just kind of the beginning of a discussion of where that budget wants to go.
I'd be willing to maybe entertain a motion that we could commit a level of dollars which could go either toward tickets for commissioners to attend and or to the support of the event. I mean, we go to supporting the event one way or the other. Does that make some sense? If we just, at least on today, the event's coming up in April, so it's not that far down the pike, but. So rather than, my one thought was to defer this, but perhaps we could at least commit to, and not everybody maybe has their schedule down as far as whether they can attend or not, but would anybody feel comfortable just at least dedicating a certain amount that would, like I say, both cover commissions to attend who wish to, and then support the event with whatever balance is left?
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be terrific to have a representation of the Human Relations Commission at this event. it would accomplish a lot in a sense of the visibility to that community that's attending. It's a huge turnout. And the opportunity to network and connect and go forward, the bridging of us to them. I think that's a great experiment this year to see if you can get you all there and have a visibility and get at a table together and get to know people.
All right. Do we have a motion, or anybody wish to respond to this request?
I move to approve the whole 500.
The 500? Okay. And would you care to extend it to the included support of commissioners attending?
Yeah.
Training costs?
And support for the tickets?
Yeah? Okay, so we have a motion. $500, that would include tickets for attending. And then we encourage commissioners to attend.
I would second.
All right. Any additional conversation on that, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of $500 for LSS Building Bridges, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. The second request we have is from the Women Initiative Network of Liberia and Fargo. They are requesting $500. You have the information in front of you in terms of this relatively new, but not totally new organization and the individuals that they are working with. So I'm opening this up for a conversation as well. And again, the Women's Initiative Network is here, correct? Precious? Yeah, okay. So if we do have any questions, if you'd be willing that we could direct them to you. I would disclose that I had the opportunity to visit with the executive director, Precious, on another matter, and was very inspired by the kinds of things that this organization is attempting to do and working with particularly single mothers, single parents, and their children, and the elders within particularly the Liberian community. Do commissioners, this one is not as time sensitive as the initial one. Do commissioners wish to have time to examine this further? That would be great. Would you like to maybe defer since we, any other thoughts on that?
I would like to hear from the representative of this organization to just explain a little bit about their mission. It seems a lot to me.
Okay. Oh, maybe we could do that. We can incorporate it into public comment and perhaps. So Precious, would you be willing to come and talk a little bit to the commissioners? We would invite you to come to the stand right over here. There's a microphone. We apologize for this new formality that we've found ourselves in. Yeah. So if you'll just talk into the microphone, if you could introduce yourself and your position with the Women's Initiative Network.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Precious Due, the founder and executive director of Women Initiative Network of Liberia in Fargo, North Dakota. I started this non-for-profit organization in 2017, where I decided to work with other single women in my community to help improve the lifestyle of being single and taking care of your kids and doing your basic job activities. And I have been sponsoring this project from my own pocket. And currently, I am going down, like I feel like I'm drowning and I need help. So I decided to otherwise by getting out into the community, reaching out to people that are thinking randomly help so that this dream can come to a reality. The Women Initiative Network of Liberia is actually, we have our missions and visions, which is building our communities and improving life. We have so many of our teenagers who have now dropped out of high schools and colleges because of having children and taking care of them by themselves. Currently, we're working with up to 15 single women, which we give some of them right to go to shelter home for help, take them to food pantry, and carry them to other assistance area. This organization is really in need. We don't have no sponsor. Everything I do is come from my own income. I have to work full-time job and also work as an executive director to see the dream come true. So today I'm here to appeal to the body to grant me the assistance so that we can be able to secure the office space that we just found it because I just been working at home. We found an office space which is on 15 South 21 Street, Fargo, where we do most of our training now with the kids, and there where we pick our ladies up to carry them to places. So, and with that being said, like again, I say I need help. I'm stranded, I'm out of worry, I cannot say it more, and I cannot go furthermore without help.
Thank you. Questions for Precious?
Is there any questions?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming here today. I just wanted to know more about those young women that you say that are dropping out of high school because they get pregnant. And I didn't see anything here in your agenda about birth control or helping them understand, how to deal with these things. Is that going to be on your agenda to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Some actually, and that was going to create another training too for some of them. So I think I mentioned it earlier that we're going to be having awareness program, training so that we can prevent it for other people not to be into that category.
Okay. Thank you.
The questions?
Hi, Precious. I would like to say thank you for coming and bringing this issue to the table. I have been in the community for a while, and I can testify that whatever you talked about is real and is happening in the high schools, and I'm very glad that you took the road to do something about it. But I would like to ask the fact that most of the issues about teen pregnancy and stuff like that, are you working with groups like Planned Parenthood for educational and resources and stuff like that?
Yes, we just started a communication, and I'm supposed to meet with some of them soon this week so we can set up a partnership. But like I said, I cannot do the partnership without having the fund to help run the program. So right now I need the form so that we can get out. Because I've been out there talking to other people who are willing to work with me. But if I do start the project right now, I need gasoline, I need to pick the kids from their homes and other stuff like that. Actually, that's what I'm doing. But it's still kind of hectic for me when there is no fund to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Precious, I'm just curious about your working relationship with the alternative high school at Agassiz. We have adult ed, people can stay in the programming till 21 years old or so. If not, we might make sure you get connected to them so that folks can continue their education and know their options for getting their high school GED degrees or regular high school degrees. So just put that in your thinking cap that if I can introduce you or anybody to the folks over at Agassiz School, happy to.
I will, definitely be happy to.
All right, any other comments, questions? Any sense of action for today?
No, I can only say from my perspective, our budget seems to be woefully inadequate because there are so many important things that we need to attack, and got to find a way to do it. So I do have some suggestions for that, but I'll talk to Mr. Strand later about it.
Okay. Perhaps what we could do, as I said, since we just saw this for the first time today, we could defer action on this particular proposal and have a chance to talk with the program a bit more about the ideas and ways that we can also help with making connections, and then revisit this in March, if that would be okay? That we would revisit the request at our March meeting. Or are you willing?
I'm sorry, I do not understand why we have to wait that long.
Okay,
She has
I'm looking for a motion of action.
I motion that we take action and donate the amounts.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have a second on that motion?
I will second.
Thank you. Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor of $500 for the Women's Initiative Network of Liberia indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Precious.
Before I leave, let me just take this time to say thank you to all of you who just voted among the amount. I highly appreciate it. And I just don't know what to say right now, but I say thank you to everyone.
All right. Thank you, Precious, for being here today. All right. Recognizing the time, I'm going to be moving us into strategic planning follow-up. We had our second of two sessions this Tuesday evening with Rachel and Anita from REACH. Really quickly, my takeaways, we spent the evening talking about big ideas. We talked about the beginnings of developing a vision statement, and we actually developed a prioritization of action steps that we would like to be taking. And it was fun. We were told that we needed to have fun, and I think we did. We spent 2.5 hours together, and it went by really quickly, and I think we had some product there. Reflections from anyone else who was spent the evening Tuesday night in the process?
Well, my takeaway was it was fun, but also it was educating. Like, I've learned so many things that was just coming through other people's thinking and how welcoming and open Rachel and her partner were in the process.
Great. Other comments?
And I agree, it was fun. And it's always good for us to be able to get together outside of this room so we can get to know each other and decide on how well we work together, what we can do together. And I also thought it was very enlightening in the one exercise where we came up with top ideas on things that we want to work on.
Yep.
You know, to get some focus and where we want to go as a commission.
Great. I think what the community, again, and I appreciate everybody who participated in both the first and second session. I was very inspired by the fact of the levels of commitment that each commissioner brought to this. I appreciated Commissioner Strand, you joining us Tuesday evening. That shows a real commitment from the City of Fargo for the kinds of work that we do. I believe that we are a commission that are saying we are going to be more than just words, that we are actions, and we are. There's kind of a not a nervousness, but we want to get going. We want to get going on making this a better community for everybody. So I really feel like there's going to be something coming out of this, and we're going to be excited to be launching the new improved Fargo Human Relations Commission to the community and getting their input to help develop this going forward. So watch for that. The staff is going to be fine-tuning the vision statement that will come back to us, and then we will be writing that, so that really drives our mission. So thank you for that. Attendance, this is a standing kind of thing. We had quorum today. There was a little nervousness about, as of this morning, that we may not be a quorum. So I want to keep stressing the fact of all of our accountability and responsibility, that we respond to all notices of meetings, letting people know that we're going to be here. It helps with planning. And so kudos to all of you. The two people that aren't here, we knew they were not going to be here, so that's good. We need to be hearing from you in a timely fashion, so keep that up. Is there other business before the commission today? Hearing none. Any staff reports? None? No. All right. And was there any additional public comment that you wish to make, Precious, on behalf of the, we had public comment down at the bottom here, but we appreciated you stepping up when asked. All right. Hearing no other business before the commission, consider this meeting to be adjourned.